You're about to see a phenomenal breakdown on Jamil Damji's story. We broke down on how he got started in wholesaling, all the different struggles he had to go through to turn them around and get to where he is today and create many successes for himself and for other people all around the world. It's time to enjoy the In a Pickle podcast for you to get out of a pickle. All right, welcome to the In a Pickle podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Jamil Damji.
What's up?
How's everything going today?
Phenomenal. How about yourself?
Phenomenal. So I'm here trying to figure out how to get a lot of people out of a pickle, and you've been able to do this through Key Glee with a lot of locations and helping tens of thousands of students through Astro. So love to break down on how you got started in wholesaling to start. Like, when did you get started and what was the journey in that?
First, thanks for having me on your show. This is super cool. It's great to watch you develop, and of course, you and your family are all very dear to me, and I think the world needs to hear from you and what you guys are putting out there, because you guys are doing great work. So good job.
Appreciate it.
Now, with my origin story and getting into wholesaling, it's an interesting thing because I didn't get into wholesaling on purpose.
Really?
It was accidental, really. Mm-hmm. And let me kind of take you back into another time, because we're speaking about the late 1990s, early 2000s, right?
Wow.
When were you born?
2004.
Okay, so you were still sperm, okay? And so or an egg. I don't know if the sperm would have been made yet, but you were an egg. The eggs are lifetime. The eggs are there for life. The sperm come and go. So you were an egg still at this point. I had been in a company at the time that was a media company in the early days of the internet.
Okay.
My job was calling people out of the yellow pages, convincing them that the internet was a real thing.
Okay.
And that they should stop or add, in addition to their yellow page advertisements, a website into the mix, because one day people are going to go to this thing called the internet to find your business.
Okay.
And people were like, "You're crazy. The Yellow Pages has made me millions of dollars. It's the most consistent advertising source that I've ever used. I spend $100,000 a year on my Yellow Page spread and all my ads, and I don't think this internet thing's gonna last."
So how new was the internet at the time when you got started in this?
The internet had been around a while, but it hadn't become commercially available yet. And so I'd say the internet was maybe a couple years old at this time, like really being used by people. Then the early days of the internet, it was a dark place, right? It wasn't what the internet is now. It's still a dark place, but there's so much in the internet now. There's like dark places. There's places with light. There's good stuff. You can find what you find in the world, you can find on the internet times 1,000, right?
100%.
Then it was just a lot of darkness and like seediness and shadiness and like weird stuff, right? And then some utility. So I'm convincing business owners that the internet's real, and I do a pretty good job of it. I'm selling these 6-page websites for $600 a pop, and I'm doing so well that the company that I was working for ended up wanting me to like kind of take over, because I had done more sales for them in a week than they had done in a quarter.
Wow.
When I started.
We're on a mission to help every wholesaler in the country actually get their deals sold, because a lot of people are doing acquisitions. So we created this free course for you to be a connector to hunt down wholesalers who have the deals, and you can go find the buyers, or we can partner up to find the buyers.
And the 1-hour free mini course is at justinpickle.com. That's PICKELL.com. Don't want to miss it, guys. It'll change your life. It changed mine after 27 years of in-home sales, dealing with sellers, dealing with homeowners in the refinance business, the real estate business, the mortgage business. I learned from my 18-year-old son at the time that you can actually connect with other people that already do all this legwork and make money together, and everybody's happy and they're scaling up their businesses.
And now back to the podcast.
So I saw that they were in trouble, and I saw it as an opportunity for me to take over. And so I did. I actually took control of the company because they were weak at the time.
So you controlled all their sales?
I controlled all the sales, and the funny thing how it played out I wasn't really involved in the business of it. And so I didn't know how much it cost for us to make these 6-page websites that I was selling for $600 a piece, right?
Yeah.
And neither did my business partners, because it ultimately ended up actually costing $700 to build one of these $600 websites that I sold. So every time I made a sale, we lost money.
Yeah, and plus they had to pay you.
And well, I'm an owner at this point, right? So like,
you're losing money.
We're losing money, right? And and nobody can understand why at the end of the week we're always at a deficit once all the bills are paid. And so that's frustrating. But my business partner, who was with me at the time, was also doing another thing. He was in real estate development with his father.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you and your dad do. And his dad was building these luxury townhomes. And how they would do it is they would go and demolish an older bungalow and do what's called an infill project, where they would take an old bungalow and put 2 new luxury duplexes in its place. And they would make like $150,000, $160,000 every time they'd complete one of these deals.
Yeah.
And so they'd do like as many of these as they could, but their limiting factor was they didn't have enough of those houses to demolish. And so I'm like eavesdropping a conversation that these guys are having about the money that they're making and what their problem is. And I'm trying to wedge my way into this opportunity. And they're super resistant. They're telling me to mind my own business. I don't have any credit. I'm not a real estate agent. I don't add any value. I bring nothing to the table. I have no money. You know, all of the things, right? And I focus on what they were needing, right? I focus, well, you said you need
a deal,
more houses to demolish. Well, what if I find that? Oh, yeah, if you can find that, let us know. And they're kind of laughing with each other like, you know, look at this idiot over here. He says he can find us one of these houses. Like, okay, buddy, yeah, good job, right? So next day I'm walking my dog.
Yeah.
And I actually live in a neighborhood where this development is happening.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing the construction up and down my street. It's like everywhere. And I'm in a rental, right?
Yeah.
And I'm living in the basement suite of this rental.
How old were you at this time?
I'm in my early 20s.
Early 20s,
Yeah,
so around my age.
I'm like at 22-ish. I'm 22.
Yeah.
So is that how old you are?
21.
21, yeah, right at your age, right?
Yeah.
I was, and so I'm here where you are, right? And I call one of the houses that I had tried to rent a few months earlier, because I had just actually moved into that basement suite.
Yeah.
And there was an upper floor that was available in the same street, actually a whole house. And she hadn't been able to rent it out yet. And the sign was still there on the lawn. Yeah. So I called her, and it was like a few $100s out of my budget, so I didn't end up staying there. But it's obviously a hard house to rent because she still has it available. So I call her up and I ask, you know, you've been having a hard time. I'm watching this house sitting here for rent for months now, and you haven't been able to let it out. Would you sell it? And she was like, yeah, but the number has to be right. Well, what would that need to be? She says $350,000.
$350,000.
Yeah, and I said, okay. To me, she could have said $2 billion, right? Because I didn't have $20 at the time, you know, like, so
you're not looking at it for you to buy.
I just don't understand yet, right? She just says $350,000, and I'm like, okay,
you're not
I'll get back to you.
Guru yet.
No, I have no idea what it is, right? I'm like, I'm still super green. So I race to the office and I talk to my business partner and I show him the address, and I think there was this like moment, I believe, that was divinely orchestrated for me. Because in that time, there's a couple of ways you could handle that. I could have gone to him and said, hey, bro, here's this house. That's the address. Yeah. I can get it for $350K. Yeah. And had I done that, he would have been like, cool, man. That's great. Yeah, we'll buy that. And here's $5,000 for or $2,000 for doing a good job. Good boy. Like
you're unexperienced.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like, good bird dog. Like, I would have happened, right? Yeah. And I would have been happy if they would have said, "Hey, here's $2,500." I would have been like, "Hell yeah, man, that's great. I'll do this again." You know.
You wouldn't know better.
I wouldn't have known better. And I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Something made me change how I approached it, and I said, what would you pay for this address?
Yeah.
And I just
The
framing of it, I just left it there. I just let it sit. So he had to tell me.
Yeah.
And then he looks at it. He's like, 400 all day, maybe even a little more. I said, okay, 400 for sure though. Yeah, 400, like easy, because we bought one for a little over 400, and it's not as good of a location as this one. This one's on a quiet road. We bought one for 400 on a busy road.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, got it. So now I have a $50,000 problem to solve, right? Because how do I get $350,000 to buy this house? Because I don't have any money.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, okay, maybe relatives. So I start calling uncles and aunts. Okay, here's the situation. I can buy this house for $350,000. I've got a buyer for that house for $400,000. What I need is a loan. I need somebody to give me $350,000 so I can buy the house and then sell it to that guy the next day.
Yeah.
And whatever the profit is, I'll share it with you. And everyone was like, nah, we're not loaning you any money. You're not getting nothing from us, right?
Not looking to help.
No one wanted to help me.
Yeah.
I was also the black sheep of my family, right? I'm the guy who didn't get into medical school. I'm the guy who wasn't dating Indian girls. Like, it was just a bunch of white chicks, right? Like, I'm the guy that they're like, nah, he's a problem, So, like, I'm not the good Indian boy that they all want to loan money to, right? So that's the other piece.
Maybe if you went to medical school.
Yeah, if I had been just a little bit more what they had expected out of me, then maybe they would have lent me the money. But that wasn't what was happening.
So what happened after that?
So then I'm in my zone of genius, right? Because what am I doing for a living? I'm in the phone book calling specific industries. Like one day I'd call appliance repair people, and then one day I'd call real estate sign makers. And the reason why I would just call industries, one industry at a time, because that's how they were given to you in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
Right? They were alphabetical by industry. Right?
You.
So attorneys was an A, and so that's how that's how the yellow pages worked. You probably haven't ever seen the yellow pages before.
Not really, but I think I've seen like a phone book sitting for my grandma.
Yeah, they're it's antiques now, right?
Yeah.
So I understand the yellow pages, and so I start looking up attorneys, and I'm looking up specifically real estate attorneys, and I just know what I do. I know how to do this, so I start cold calling these guys.
Yeah.
And I'm asking, just, do you have any idea on what I could do to solve this problem? And an attorney named David Steed, who's been since disbarred, unfortunately. I've said his name so many times on podcasts talking about how I got into this. I'm sure he would have had a ton of business, but I don't know what malarkey he got into that got him disbarred. But sorry, David. Nevertheless,
at least he helped
tens
of thousands of people with you.
Seriously, because he, first of all, was so fresh out of law school, he didn't have a legal secretary picking up his phone. There was no receptionist there. It was him.
Yeah.
Right? Second, his last name, which is what he was listed under, was Steed, Steed, right?
Yeah.
Which means I started at the letter A, and I went all the way to the letter S, and almost to the end of letter S, ST, before I found the answer. Wow. So all these people who are like, every time I try to call the seller, they hang up on me. Every time I try to call a real estate agent, they're mad at me, and they tell me that I'm lowballing them, and it hurts my feelings. Like when I hear that from somebody, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Because you're ridiculous. If you really want something, you're going to do whatever it takes to get it, right? Excuse my language, but that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And so here I am calling down to the letter S, and David Steed picks up the phone, and he says, oh, yeah, what you're doing right here, it's easy. You don't even need money. Like, what are you saying?
No money.
He's like, you don't need anything to do this. You just need contracts.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, tell me more. He says, well, what you'll do is you'll have two contracts. It's like, and I'll email you the contracts right now.
Okay.
They're the same contract. One of them is going to be you as the buyer. And you're going to fill out that contract. And if you need help understanding it, I'll walk you through it. The address, you're going to be the buyer. It's going to have the seller on the seller's line, and you're going to have the price at $350,000. And then you'll decide what the closing date is. You're going to write my name for the closing attorney in this section over here.
Yeah.
You're going to initial all these pages. He said, then on the second contract, what you're going to do is you're going to have your name on the line of the seller. And you're going to have your buyer's name on the buyer line, and then the price is going to be the $400,000 that they're going to buy it from you for. And I said, okay. Well, how do I get the 350 grand? He said, from the guy who's going to give you 400. I'm like, yeah, but how do I get the 400 before I have the 350? Before I have the 350? He's like, well, that's why we do this thing. He said, on your name on the contract, he's like, you got to write and/or nominee.
Okay, so you nominated him.
Yeah, and which is basically the same as and/or assignee.
Yeah,
it's just the Canadian way of saying it. Right?
Okay.
So that's it. He's like, that's it. He's like, you fill out those contracts and you bring them to me. And I said, then what happens? He's like, in a couple weeks, I'll do some research. I'll check the mortgage. I'll check the banks. I'll make sure there's no creditors, no judgments, no liens, no things. And if all that's clear, I'll have a check for you, minus my fees.
Yeah. Did the buyer not pay the fees?
No, I had no idea about closing costs and fees, right? I'm like, I'm like, okay, right? Yeah. And so remember, I've not learned this from anybody. There's no Cody Sperber yet.
Resourcefulness.
Right? There was no online educators teaching wholesaling, bro.
The internet
it wasn't even called wholesaling. The man told me it was called a skip transfer.
Skip transfer.
That's what he called it. And that's what I thought I was doing to earn money. I thought I'm the greatest skip transferer of all time.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I made this up. I truly thought that I created a business model. I thought I invented wholesaling.
You almost did for tens of thousands of other people.
For myself at the time I had, right?
Yeah.
In reality, it had been a commonly used practice. Many companies had already been wholesaling. A lot of real estate developers were already wholesaling. For me, I'm the inventor of it in that time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I started. A couple weeks after the contracts were signed, he had a check for me, cashier's check for $47,000 and change.
Wow.
I was so over the moon at that, and also scared by it, because what do I do with $47,000?
At 22 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I was living off of $250 a week.
Okay, so like
right, $300 a week,
12 grand a year.
Like really, I was living dirt poor. Like I was, I was using nothing. Right, I survived off of Costco. Yeah, and I would go to the Costco little restaurant thing, and for $1.50, I'd feed myself. Right, like that's what I lived on. So that was a lot of money for me at the time, and I didn't actually cash that check for months. And somebody said, if you don't cash this thing, it's going to expire in 6 months. So like, go cash that.
Wow.
And so, I folded it up and put it in my wallet, and I had looked at it so many times that, when you fold a piece of paper and you unfold it and fold it and unfold it, it starts to break. Yeah. That's what had happened to the check. It was so creased, and it was getting like, and then my butt sweat from it being in my wallet was just there. Like it was like starting to get damp and stuff, but it cleared. And I got that money, and I never looked back. After that, I made it my new career. I would go into the yellow pages. I'd go into the newspaper and the classified sections. Another thing you have no clue that existed at one point. See, we had these things called newspapers back then. Yeah. And that's where people went for the news. And what people would do on the end or the back pages of a newspaper is they'd put ads out there. So that was basically Facebook Marketplace. You could buy a coffee table there. You could buy pets there. You could even buy a girl back there. What? They would sell everything on the back of the newspaper. I'm telling you, this is a real thing. And they would have...
so it was like the MLS as well? Like for agents?
Yeah, for rents. They'd have for sales. It was all in the back of a newspaper. And so I would go get the newspaper, and I would just look and see who was selling a house or who was renting a house, and I would call for rent by owners that were in specific neighborhoods, and I would ask them if they'd be interested in selling instead of renting, and that was my lead gen. And I'd do 2 or 3 of these deals a month, and I was killing it. And then I realized that I could do the exact same thing, but with apartment buildings. And so I moved from single-family homes to apartment buildings. And I'd make $100,000 every time I would wholesale an apartment building. And, we went this way up until about 2007, made a pile of money, like $12 million. I was sitting on $12 million in cash, my sister and I. Wow. And that's when everything went to shit. because I was again. It's like, you know, I'm a little older than you now at this time, right? I'm in like my early mid 20s, 24ish.
Yeah.
23, 24.
In 2007.
Yeah. And now I have money.
Yeah.
Right. And so I bought the cars. I had, you know, I had like $1 million worth of cars, dude. Like, it was so dumb. I had like a psycho girlfriend. I had this beautiful home made out of glass. I bought my mom a house on a lake. Like, it was crazy. And one day I'm at one of the projects, one of these apartment buildings that I'd flipped to a developer, and I'm kind of looking at what he's got going on here. And dude pulls up in a Rolls, right?
Yeah.
And he's got this lady with him that was like, I just saw her and I was like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. And then you see the man.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
doesn't make sense.
No, it didn't make sense at all. Like, he was at best 5 foot tall, probably a solid 200 pounds, you know, just balding. Like what, his shirt was too small. The end of his belly was hanging out of it. There's little hairs there. Like, just super weird and ugly, right? Like, and this man's with a 10, you know, and I'm like, oh, I get it. I see how the world works now. And so I said to my sister, I want to do what he does. I want to be a developer, right? And that was like the beginning of the end for us, because I got out of my lane and then I went into something I didn't understand. Yeah. And so we took all of that cash and we ended up buying like 4 apartment buildings and decided we're going to convert all of these apartment buildings into condos. And then 2008 happens, the credit crunch goes down. All of those projects go belly up. All of the cash that I had invested in it disappeared. And we went from millionaires to all of us living in an apartment.
Wow.
My whole family. I not only did we lose all of the money, but I had my parents co-sign the construction loans for those apartment buildings. And so I lost our family home.
The credit was destroyed.
Everything was gone. We were homeless, bro. We went
crazy.
We went from my mom living on a lake house and me living on a house that overlooked the entire city to all of us in a 700 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. Wow. My mom, dad, sister, niece, dog, cat, me. All in that little apartment.
And this is all still in Canada?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
crazy.
You know, it's just kind of how the cookie crumbled at the time. And it was, you know, it's funny though, like your dad just said offline, he's like, my parents must have been mad. You know what? They weren't.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's where I really learned about family, because never once did my sister and my dad and my mom ever look at me and say, it's your fault. You did this to us. They didn't. They just said, well, we're together. As long as we're together, we're okay.
Yeah, because that's all you guys got.
Yeah, and it taught me so much, man, because, like, that really showed me the value of family. And, like, that's why I think what you and your dad have is so special. And I really gravitate to you guys, and I appreciate him and his love for you and how much you respect and love him, too.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's a really neat dynamic and one that I'd love to see more. You know, like, it's the coolest thing when your family is your biggest supporter, your number one fan, you know?
For sure.
And it was something that I wish I had with my dad, right? Like, my dad never really was, you know, I didn't hear my dad ever tell me he was proud of me until, I think, 2 years ago, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. And even then, like, I'll still see him and he'll ask me, like, are you broke yet?
Wow. That's
you know?
crazy.
It's like, okay, thanks, man. Love you, you know? And so it's different. But my number one fan, my number one supporter, my sister, my mom, you know? Like, they got my back. You know, they are forever my team, you know?
Beautiful.
And so I think it's great. I think I'd like to see more people have that in their lives, and more families support each other and love on each other and help each other get to the spot. Because, you know, you're early 20s and you could make different choices. You know?
For sure.
You could be a total asshole right now. You could be out doing what other 20-year-olds do, go to college and drink every night, and you know, and take drugs and maybe do a little bit of homework, and like that's pretty much the college experience these days, right? And so you could be doing that, or you could be, you know, working or traveling and doing, you know, whatever it is.
We are working and traveling with you right now.
Yeah, exactly, right? But you're doing it in an industry that I think you have like unlimited opportunities in, and then you're doing it with your dad and your mom and your family, and that's special, dude. That's really cool. And at your age, you know, more people your age will see something like this and see the dynamic between you and your dad, and then they won't have that attitude that I know kids can have sometimes. They'll be like, man, I'm too cool for my dad. Like, I don't want to be that kid who's just like with my dad all the time, you know? But like, because you or some kids mistakenly think that that's not cool.
Yeah,
but
they think they're better.
It's really damn cool. It is cool. It's cool that you got a dad like that. It's cool that you got a family like that. That's cool.
Major blessing.
What's not cool is what you think is cool.
Yeah.
Right? Being a douchebag's not cool. You know, calling your mom a B word is not cool.
For sure.
Right? Being that and being obnoxious to your household is not cool. What's cool is being respectful. What's cool is being a man. What's cool is seeing a good example of what a real man and a real woman are like, right? And so 100%. I think if more people, especially at your age, are making content now, and you know, how much money did you make last month?
Last month we made about $70,000 in wholesale fees.
I mean, okay, so like, you tell me, who's 21 years old out there right now and can say that?
Not many,
Not
but
a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So that you're an inspiration to young people.
For sure.
You should be, and I think that. And this is something that you don't need to be a ball player or a rapper or an entertainer or any of that stuff to touch money like that. I thought that when I was your age, I thought that's what I had to be. I was like, I want to be a gangster rapper because that's how I want to be like Tupac. I just want to get all the money. I want to have all the girls. I want to have the cars. I want all the things.
Yeah.
You know, but instead, God was like, nah, you're an Indian guy, bro. Gangster rap's not for you.
Yup.
So that dream didn't work out. Now they got Indian rappers, apparently. I seen a dude the other day who was like, da, 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 da. People were like, yeah, let's go. I'm like, man, it's my time. I'm too late.
You go to some Indian weddings, probably have a lot of that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
what?
We'll see.
You don't
We'll
go
see.
any?
I haven't. No, dude. Like I said, I was the black sheep. It's the first time I've ever dated an Indian girl is now.
Wow.
I was married. Yeah, I was married to a Canadian woman. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. But we're still the best of friends, and we're still working together, have businesses together, and she's a phenomenal human being, one of the best people I know. But you know, I'm in a season of my life where I was like, well, what do I want? What do I want out of a relationship? And it's actually kind of hard for a person in my situation to really date.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who's around you because they want to be around you or who's around you because of what you can offer.
Yeah.
Right? And cool, I offer a lot of stuff. And I can say there was a part of me that was like, yeah, I want to get this way. I want this money and I want all these things so that I could be more desirable. I think every guy has that in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But truth be told is I'd rather them have liked me and desired me before that so then I knew why you were really here.
Yeah.
Because when you get all that cool stuff, then you got to start sifting through all the crazy.
Might be the guy with the belly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that exactly, because, you know, it is what it is.
But you got to get people to like you for who you are. And
yeah, and, you know, I think also how you are inside is reflected to you outside. So 100%. The people that find you, like if you're broken in there and you're like, you need attention, you need validation, you're thirsty, you've got all these little insecurities and problems, you're going to find somebody that's going to mirror that. And then that relationship is going to be like that. And instead of being soulmates, you'll actually be wound mates. You're two people who met each other because you have a common wound, a common trauma. And you find resonance with each other through that bullshit. But when you have healed or are healing yourself, and then you find another person that is healing themselves as well, and then you come together in that energy.
You're healing each other.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a whole other way of existing out there. And so I'm excited because that's what I'm starting to experience, and I'm enjoying it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So with you being in 2000, like 8, 10, like what's happening after that? You and your sister, your family is like in this apartment. How did you guys turn it around and grow and help each other from there?
Well, I had to take a pause for a second at that time because I was pretty beat up. I was a little depressed.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of I sworn off real estate. If you know, and it's funny, right? 'Cause that didn't last, but
for how long?
A few years. I actually at that time said I'm gonna go try something else.
Okay.
And you know, I was always kind of the clown in my group of friends, right? I was always the guy who all the girls would say, "Oh, you're funny," you know, but they wouldn't kiss me, but they tell me I'm funny, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I know that's true because I hear it everywhere that I go. My mom laughs at me, my friends laugh at me, the girls laugh at me, everybody laughs at me. So maybe I'll go try to be a comedian. So I moved to LA and I tried that. I went all in. I went to the open mics. I took classes. I got some work and I did okay. 4 years. I was on some pretty cool stages. I did the Improv. I did the Comedy Store, Laugh Factory. I was on an improv team at the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is a really big improvisational theater.
Yeah.
I worked at the Second City. So I did some, I cut my teeth in that world. But the thing about comedy is you don't really start paying the bills until you're Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Like everybody before that's poor. Because there's no money in comedy until you're a star.
And LA is expensive.
So expensive, right? So I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I can't make ends meet. And so my sister is actually the family savior at that time because she didn't get out of real estate. She stayed in Canada and continued trying to rebuild us. And she did. She rebuilt us from nothing to a place where she had acquired a few apartment buildings and then turned them into sober livings. She bought these two. What it was is we bought these 2 apartment buildings from my dad as a birthday present as a joke.
4?
Yes.
Yeah.
We had bought them for him super cheap, like $30,000 for apartment buildings. You're like, what kind of apartment buildings do you get for $30,000? Well, that's why.
Yeah.
They were in the worst neighborhood in Canada.
Wow. Where's that?
Called North Central in Regina, Saskatchewan.
North Central, Regina.
The North Central neighborhood of Regina, Saskatchewan. It's got the highest murder rate, the highest drug use, prostitution, all of the things, right? It's a terrible, terrible, terribly heavily impacted area.
For sure.
By crime and all kinds of problems. And that's where our buildings are.
Yeah.
And
so why did you guys want to do that?
We didn't have a choice. We bought it as a joke. We were like, hey, Dad, we bought your birthday present. Look what we got you. We got you your own apartment buildings. Look at these. And he's like, what is that? We're like, But we were making money, so we were kind of laughing about it, right? We're like, whatever. We'll just buy these. And we put them in my dad's name, and they just sat. So much so that we almost forgot we had them.
Wow.
And then here we are, totally broke, but those still existed because they were in an LLC in another province in my dad's name.
Yeah.
And so when we lost everything, that didn't get attached. So it was all that was left.
So you guys bought that before the crash?
Before the crash.
Wow.
And so my sister goes there and is like, I guess this is what I've got to do. And unit by unit, one by one, she renovated those units.
Wow.
Put in an occupant, did another one, put in an occupant, did another one, put in an occupant. And she got it to a place where the government of Saskatchewan reached out to her and asked if she would be interested in operating these as sober living. Yeah. Because she was doing such a good job with cleaning up those buildings,
Yeah.
And so she got some of the because it's mainly First Nations community that lives in the area.
What's First Nations?
Like American Indian.
Okay.
But in Canada, right?
For sure.
And so they're referred to as First Nations in Canada. And so their elders and community leaders were really interested in something positive happening there as well. And so they would also lend help and resources and people to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish. Fast forward a couple of years, my sister transforms these two drug dens into these thriving flowers in the community that are now like a place where people gather and eat together and cook, and there's no syringes outside anymore. There's chalk and people playing hopscotch, and she did that.
Beautiful.
And
how long did it take for her?
It took her a couple years to get there and to accomplish that. And then she ended up selling those buildings, and she got $1 million out of them.
Wow. Beautiful.
And then brought that $1 million to Arizona. And with that million, we started Keegley.
Beautiful. So you guys started Keegley with $1 million. What do you do with the $1 million? Like, how do you know what to do with it?
Well, so there's a little part I'm skipping over here.
Yeah.
But so we have the cash. And now in my life, I'm not making it as a comedian. Yeah. Right? You know, I got a job here, job there. No one's calling me for roles. Nobody's, you know, I audition here and there. I'm not catching anything. Any role for an Indian guy is like doctor. Yeah. Doctor or terrorist. Right? Like I'm either Dr. Haji or I'm like Ahmed Muhammad. Right? That's the two roles that they want me to play. Right? And none of that is comedy. Yeah. And so like nothing's happening for me in entertainment. And I had just asked Natalie, who I ended up marrying, to marry me. Yeah. And so now I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get married. I've got nothing. I've got no prospects. I don't know how I'm going to support us, right? I'm nervous. And so I'm like, okay, well, at that point, I say to my sister, with that $1 million that you have, why don't we start buying stuff in Phoenix for cash flow? And because you could come to Phoenix at that time, and you could buy a condo in Phoenix at the crash, like after the crash, 2010, 11 kind of time. You could buy a condo for $20,000. Wow. But the rents hadn't depressed. So I could buy that condo for $20,000 and rent it for $800 a month.
Get all your money back in like a year and a half.
That's the thing, right? You couldn't get those returns anywhere. It was almost unfathomable, like where that market had crashed to, right? Yeah. And so we started buying all these cash flow opportunities, and we're like holding on to a lot of it. And so now our lives are getting a little bit better because we have some cash flow coming in, and you know. But in the process of doing that, I was writing offers on short sales to get these condos, to get these houses that we ended up buying. Yeah. Now, if you were not in real estate at the time, but in that time, buying short sales, the whole period of like 2010, 11, 12 was like craziness. Everything on the market was a short sale. Yeah. And short sales don't operate the way regular transactions do. You've got to write an offer. The bank's going to take a month to look at the offers, and then they're going to approve one, or they're not going to approve it. It's a whole thing, right? Yeah. And so you never really know if you're going to get a deal or not. For sure. And it usually isn't going to be known to you for a couple of months. So a real investor is going to write multiple offers because you don't know what's going to stick.
The more offers you place, the better.
Yeah, the more will end up coming to fruit, right? And so I have all these offers out there on these short sales, and then 1 month, I don't know what happened. We just got a lot of homes approved. Beautiful. And I couldn't afford to close them all, right? Like it was just like we were out of money. But I have these 2 live contracts. Yeah. And so I think to myself, I wonder if what I did back in Canada would work here. Yeah. And so that's what I did. I ended up figuring out, going back to the Yellow Pages weren't the thing now. So I go to Google and I'm like, where does, like, kind of like, how are babies made? I'm like, how do real estate transactions close in the United States? Yeah. And I learn about title companies, and I learn about closing attorneys, and I learn about all these things. And I'm like, title company, okay. So then I start cold calling title companies in Arizona, and I'm like, do you guys do skip transfers? And they're like, what the did you just say, dude? And I'm like, well, okay, so let me explain it to you. Is when I buy a house and I put on my contract name as the buyer, and or nominee? And they're like, do you mean assignee? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. So anyways, this is what I'm doing. And then she's like, yes, that's called an assignment. I'm like, okay. Do you do those? We do. So basically I can buy a house without my money, somebody else's money? She's like, yep, that's called a pass-through closing or a double escrow. You could do it that way, or you could also do them by assignment. But it sounds to me like you're buying short sales, and so we'd have to look at the short sale disclosures to see if they would allow it. But if they do, that's how it would happen. And I'm like, well, I have these two that have been approved, and I've got the documents. Can I send them to you, and can you tell me if they would work? And I did. She looked at them. She's like, yeah, both of these you could do an assignment on.
Yeah.
And I was like,
what year is this?
This is now 2011.
Okay.
Beginning of 2012. Okay.
Okay.
And I end up selling 2 houses to a gentleman here named Tim Wynn. He's a wholesaler in Phoenix. Yeah. And I write these ads on Craigslist for these 2 houses in Glendale that I had under contract for $20,000, and I was selling them for $30,000. So I was going to make $10,000 a pop.
Yeah.
And 15 minutes after writing the ad, my phone is ringing, and this Tim guy is calling me. And he's like, I'm driving by the houses right now. And he drives by the house, and he calls me back 5 minutes later. He's like, I'll take them.
I'll take them.
And I'm like...
Didn't go inside?
Didn't need to go inside, didn't do nothing. He just looked at the outside and was like, I'll take them. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, but give me a deal. Give me $1,000 off each one. I'm like, done.
Yeah.
So I'm making $18,000 in like 10 minutes right now. And I'm and so then I'm like, frick. Okay, well, maybe I do this a little bit more. So then for a few months, now I get the $18,000. It works. I get the money.
Yeah.
And now I'm like doing comedy, but I'm also in my house calling real estate agents. Yeah. Like asking them if they've got short sales available, or like what they've got coming down the market, or what I could look at. And that's how the whole agent outreach lead generation thing started, because I was doing it there in my apartment in LA. Yeah. Because I just proved that it worked the week before. Yeah. And so here we go. And I'm away I go again, and I start making money. And then it was my birthday, so I've got this on my knuckles. It's 12/12. Yeah. My birthday is December 12th.
Beautiful. And
my golden birthday was 12/12/12. And on 12/12/12, I made a decision. I was leaving LA for good, and I was coming to Phoenix. Okay. I was gonna kill my dreams of being a rich and famous comedian, so that I could do the right thing and do this real estate bullshit, because it's the only thing that I know how to do that will actually make money. Yeah. And I wanted to impress my wife. I was about to get married. I needed to figure out how I was going to take care of the lady. I was going to take care of, she got a kid, I got a kid, I got to deal with this. I got to be a man,
100%.
I can't just be sitting here playing make-believe in LA anymore, telling jokes no one's laughing at, And so that's what ended up happening. And I come to Phoenix, and anyhow, the $1 million, that $1 million, we ended up leveraging that as startup capital to start Keegley. So you asked, how did I know, or what did we do? Yeah. That's how I knew what to do, because I was doing it from LA loosey-goosey. And then when I came here, we now had property, we had capital, we had a model, and time. And beautiful. Away we went.
So now you're starting Keegley in 2012, 2013.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Keegley's still a little while, a couple years down the road. At the beginning, couple years, my sister and I are just wholesaling. And I have this strategy where I'm like, I don't want anybody to talk about me, because I had just kind of came out of that whole situation where I was bankrupt, and it wasn't a great look. Right? I was kind of depressed and down about how things went in Canada. Yeah.
That's why you didn't want to go back.
Yeah, I didn't want to go back. And I also wasn't I just wanted to start over.
Yeah.
And have a new rep, a new guy, a new thing, all this stuff. And so I was one of my strategies was I would tell real estate agents that I would buy all their deals on one condition, that they would never talk about me. That's what I did. I went around to all these agents and I was like, listen, I'm going to be your like secret weapon. I'm going to be your secret cash buyer.
Yeah.
And I will always close and I will do a ton of business with you. But never talk about me. Never tell people who I am. Just don't tell them my name. I want to remain super anonymous. And I did that because I was kind of trying to stay out of people's mouths. Like I actually didn't want people to talk about me. I was a little bit concerned of having had bankrupted myself in Canada, and I didn't want any negativity. I just wanted to start over, right? But when you tell somebody not to think of something, the first thing they do is think of it.
Yeah.
And so when you tell a real estate agent not to talk about you, that's what they do.
Yeah.
And my shit blew up, bro.
Wow.
Like I just became the guy everybody talked about here. And I started getting
this guy's the secret
this,
weapon.
Yeah, I started getting all this business, and then that became a thing, and it snowballed, and then finally come Josiah and Hunter.
Yeah.
And then that turns into a relationship that we start doing wholesale deals together. And then once we did that for a year as, you know, separate entities.
You guys like JV'd on deals,
Yeah,
like kind of ran your
JV'd.
own business?
Exactly. I was the act guy. They were dispo.
Okay.
I've always been an act guy. I know people know me for dispo because that's what
Yeah.
Keegley is, but I'm actually an act guy. And if you
Hunter.
ever hear me on the phone, I'm an act guy,
Yeah.
right? But those guys were my dispo. They were selling for me, and I'm like, was really impressed with how they were doing that. And I realized, well, if they're going to sell my deals, why can't we sell everybody's deals?
Yeah.
And so that's how Keegley was born, because we realized that there was a big vacuum in the market of wholesalers locking up stuff and then not being able to sell it.
Yeah.
Like this is now like 2016. So in 2016, there was a massive dispo problem in our industry.
Yeah.
Because nobody talked about acquisitions and dispositions. Nobody understood. Nobody was talking about these things. There were no JV partnerships.
Yeah.
It was so archaic.
No
Everyone was backstabbing each other. No one was being honest, collaborative with each other. It was a mess.
Yeah.
The industry was a total shit show.
So
And
you saw problems.
we saw lots of problems. Essentially, what ended up happening was we created a company to solve those problems. And
Yeah.
you know, the greatest friendships and partnerships and days of my life happened as a result. So I'm just grateful and also amazed by it all. I look
Beautiful.
back and I think, how cool is it that life has these interesting ways of taking the hard days that you have and then using that as the fuel to give you the best days you'll ever have, you know?
100%.
And I can trace it all back. Like I can look back at how I get here, and every time I get to a mountaintop, I can see that I got to the mountaintop from one of my lowest points.
Yeah.
That if I hadn't started at that low point, I don't get to that peak. And
Yeah.
so like I almost now, when things are hard and when I am having problems and life's, because it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You're 22, so like you haven't seen enough BS yet, but you
For
will.
sure.
And as you see it, I just encourage you to have the attitude of, oh, it's gonna get really good now.
Yeah.
Because it's what happens. It gets really bad and then it gets really good.
For
and
sure.
that's the wave of life. It's just a wave, bro. It's
Yeah.
ups and downs and ups and downs. And if we get skilled at writing it, it becomes fun.
Beautiful. That's what we're working on, growing our growth and writing our story as well. So continuing with yours, like you were they were doing dispo for you. You were the acquisitions. Like, so you guys are just still a small company. So with the big mountain of you starting at the bottom and wanting to help the entire industry close their deals, like sell all the deals, like you're saying, like how did you envision like to want to start more locations and help people like become business owners to help you achieve that mission?
Well, again, solved a problem that we were having, and that we were, teaching people how to do this, and then they would leave.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, damn it. I just gave you the keys to the kingdom, and you just took them and built a castle.
Yeah.
What the hell? And it's not that I want to trap anyone. It's just that it costs a lot of money to train somebody. It takes a lot of time and energy and effort and skill, and you're transferring that into someone's brain. And so, of course, then we were like, we had to get serious about protecting ourselves. And one of those things was having non-competes, NDAs, things of that nature. But then we couldn't get away from the natural impetus a human has to be free, to do their own thing, to not have to be under someone else's
say of what to do.
Right? And so we realized that the best way to accomplish that was to create a path to freedom within the company. We're going to teach you how to do this, and then we're going to give you a roadmap on how to get to your freedom. And when you're free, we will still work together, but in a different capacity as your partner versus as your employer.
For sure.
That is how the franchise model became a thing.
For sure.
And because we had tried doing locations. Like, we went to Las Vegas to open up another Keighley before franchise even happened.
Like, you owning the location.
Yeah, and what a mess. Oh my God, we lost all kinds of money. It didn't work. Like, having a physical location or multiple physical locations wasn't going to work for us.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out how to do this cheaply in a way that we don't have to go and rent another office and do all these things and hire a brand new staff and all this stuff. How can we add another market but keep it out of Phoenix? Or how do we add another market and then have people work with us in collaboration, or our staff? So our first staff member who became a franchise was Thomas Martinez. He's now a very, very formidable wholesaler here. He works with Austin Zabak over in One Roof. He ended up, unfortunately, having a mishap with his partnership and his franchise ownership. Thomas is a great guy, but his partner ended up not being so much of one. Yeah. So it didn't work out well for them in owning the franchise. But I still wish them a bunch of luck, and I want them all to be successful. And for sure. Thomas is a really good dude, so I'm happy to see that he's still, navigating the business and doing well out there. And it's just cool, man. We've made it a long way. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. I'm not done yet.
For sure.
As a product, to kind of, as we wrap, I'm like thinking of what's the evolution of what's happened to me in the world of wholesale. And, one of the things I'd like to say is that, I've done over 7,000 wholesale deals.
Wow.
Right? And that's a lot. And when you look at the impact of what wholesaling does to real estate, it's undeniable that it makes real estate more expensive. It's undeniable, right?
We're raising the prices.
Because we're raising the price. We're adding value and raising the price. It's just it's a natural byproduct of the business model. It's what it is.
But there's always going to be people who are in pain and kind of destroying these houses as well.
Sure. There's an endless supply of life to give us what the fuel we need to keep the business going. On the other side of that, though, I was communicating with a family that I come into contact with that were living in their car around the corner from my home. And I, again, walking my dog, I tend to come to some of the coolest things in my life on dog walks. I meet these people, and it's a man putting a suit on. He's got a little Astro van, which was a funny thing for me to see. It's kind of what interested me in the van anyways, because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about those Astro vans. That's cool. And then I see this whole family there, right? Yeah. The dad's putting a suit on. The mom's got these two little kids playing in the trunk. And then I see they're living in this car. And so I go up and talk to the guy, and I say, hey, man, how you doing? Everything okay? And at first it was a little standoffish because he thought I might have been wanting him to leave or, park somewhere else, but that wasn't my intention. I just was seeing if there's anything I could do. And then I wanted to know his story, and he tells me that he had been living in a house with his wife for years, and one day he gets a knock on the door, and a guy comes up with a document and says, hey, man, sorry to do this to you, but I just bought your house.
Wow.
And I closed on it today, and I'm going to renovate it and flip it. And so here's a 30-day notice to vacate. Sorry, I don't have any rentals to help you with, but I wish you luck. And he goes. You know, he was nice about it, but still the guy's like, what do I do? So then they go onto Zillow and they see what another house would look like for them to rent. And it's triple what they're paying right now. They can't afford it.
Because they got in so early.
Well, they've been renting for all that time, and the landlord didn't want to raise the rent. The landlord was like one of those quiet landlords that doesn't do a ton. And I'm sure you've done deals with sellers like this. Yeah. I've done lots of deals with sellers like this where they're like, don't tell the occupants, don't tell the renters anything. Yeah. I don't want them to know until the deal closes, right? Yeah. That's a normal thing. Yeah, that's just how it goes with a lot of these sales, right? And so that happened to this guy. And they couldn't afford a new place. And so I asked him what the address was of the house that they lived in. Mm-hmm. And we were the wholesaler, right? Wow. And so it was full circle, right on my doorstep. The impact of what I'm doing as a business, right there. 2 kids in 100-degree weather, in the back of a van, and a dad putting a suit on to go to work. And you know, it's one of those divine moments again, right? Yeah. Where I'm faced with another opportunity, but another problem. And so it got me and the new evolution of what I'm doing in my life, which is I've been doubling down in the world of co-living. I think affordable housing is an absolute necessity in this country. And, you know, I know that I've been a factor, and I've been an aspect that has made real estate hard for people. I've made houses more expensive. I've been, you know, and it's a business. It's what we do. And I'm not sorry for it. And I don't tell people not to do it. It's just a natural byproduct of the world and what we do. But I can do something to help mitigate. And so I have a new desire that for every home I've wholesaled, I want to add an affordable unit onto the marketplace for people to live in. And so that's my new goal. 1-to-1. I want to put 7,000 affordable housing units in the United States. Okay. In my lifetime, and so that's what I'm not there yet. I'm nowhere close at the moment, but I'll get there. You know, I still got another 10 years of hard work in me, and maybe longer. And that's the mission.
Beautiful. So how many co-livings do you have right now, and how can people help you get to that mission? Like, where do you want to buy those? Yeah,
so right now I'm buying them in Phoenix, Arizona personally, but I actually have a community that I've created called Housing Alchemy, which is growing rapidly. And, you know, the members of that community are now starting their own co-livings, and so that will be an added impact and an added unit that I get to be a part of adding to the marketplace. But right now, we're personally a little over 50 co-living doors. Definitely have way more to go. I hope to, by the end of the year, get that number to 100. And then we've just recently partnered with Home Depot. Okay. So they became our actual business partner. And so they're helping us scale the co-living.
So what are they doing to help you?
We get pricing that's better than D.R. Horton.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm actually able to give that pricing to all the people that are in that Housing Alchemy world as well. They really are doubling down on being a solution for the affordability crisis in the United States, and so we're super grateful to Home Depot for becoming our partner, helping us scale, helping us grow, and doing it at a real incredible, generous gift of their time and resources and brand. So I see the road to 7,000 ahead of me, and away we go.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, hopefully everyone can help you get to this mission. And phenomenal story on how you've been able to get through all these struggles and create these successes and help so many people today.
Appreciate that, man, and you keep doing what you do, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Jamil. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Let us know on what value we can bring to you next and who you want to see next as a guest.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. It's truly an honor for you to watch, and we hope you got a lot of value out of it. And definitely, if you're interested in getting on, let us know, and We'll get you on the list.